All right. This is round number 2. Round number 1 didn't work out too well because the camera died. So, gotta charge those batteries. All right. Gonna go over a few of the tools before I get started. This is gonna be a quick painting of a lemon. It is from life. It's off to the right of the screen. And I just am unable to fit it. I guess I could figure out to get another camera and fit it in there somehow so that you can see what I'm painting. But either way, it doesn't really matter to see what I'm painting because I'm going to make up a couple of things anyways, because it's just fun to do. And so going over tools. All right, first off, this is my linen. It is oil primed. It's a Clausen linen. I think it's portrait grade 15, I think, or 13. I can't remember exactly, but linen, oil primed, really fun and slick to paint on. Brushes, I have these 5 different brushes that I'm going to be using. This is a Trekell Hog bristle brush for larger applications of paint, which is kind of nice to be able to do, but because it's a bristle brush and this oil linen tends to not be very sticky with the paint, it can take off some of the paint with the hog hair. So I have other paint brushes. These two are Langnickel. I still have Langnickel brushes. This is crazy. These are probably like 15 years old. They're the Royal Sable, pretty cheap. Rosemary makes a version of these that are of good quality, but I figure I would use what I have already. But these are nice and soft. They're not as soft as a sable, but they are soft enough to be able to apply paint onto the canvas. I have this fan brush. It's also a bristle. That's for some fun little details, not for the Bob Ross fan brush stuff. This is another Trekell. There's a Legion, and it is a little bit firmer than the Mongoose hair ones. All right, so in terms of paint that I have yellow ochre, King Blue. This is Flack White. That's right. My last name is Flack, F-L-A-C-K, and I make this white. It is a stack lead white mixed with some standard lead carbonate. I think it's lead carbonate. I would have to double check. But anyways, it's my own little mixture of lead white. Here I have Naples Yellow. This is Cad Yellow Medium, Paraline Red from Gamblin, Ultramarine Blue from Gamblin, Transparent Oxide Yellow, Transparent Oxide Red, and Raw Umber. And I've found that I can get some really good blacks with Ultramarine Blue and Raw Umber instead of using a black. But I also have a black that I like to use. But anyways, I don't know if I'll go with black in the background or not. Oh, and I also have some paper towels to be able to use and a palette knife to be able to mix with. All right. Now that all of that information is out, I am going to start to paint. Man, 4 minutes in after all that talking. All right. I'm just going to first block in the general proportion of this lemon. I think I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than normal size, average size. I'm not sure exactly how I should pronounce that, but I also have a medium that's in a little container that is off camera, and that is black oil. I love my black oil. It's good stuff. All right. Lemon. I think I'm just going to keep it centered. I'll shift it off to the right just a little bit. So lemon will be over here like that. Yeah, buddy. All right. Simple block in of what these general proportions are going to look like. And yeah, that's pretty good. There's a shadow that is cast off to the side here, and it comes just a little bit more forward. I'm doing this painting under natural light. I have northern light in my studio, which I totally love. There are some pros and cons to it, but it's set, my studio is set, my windows are basically at a 45-degree angle. and I have my canvas oriented. So when I put my paintbrush down, I can see all the information above the paintbrush because I don't care to see the information under the paintbrush. And that's why you have to have the light at a good direction. So I'm painting under the same light that I have for my reference. So I don't have a spotlight on my reference, my lemon, and I don't have a spotlight on my canvas here. So it's not necessarily separated. All right, I think I'm going to just have it flat in the back here. And I'm going to soften out that transition a little bit more so that it's simple. Okay, the hard stuff is basically done here. I'm going to shorten this up just a little bit more, flatten this out so it doesn't bulge down as much. All right, now I get to divide light shapes from shadow shapes. I'm going to use the same mixture that I have for umber. I'm going to do a little bit of construction because this is just fun to do. So this part right here is where it continues up. It changes form, direction, and then there's another part that comes off and flattens out, and then you have the navel that is right there. It looks like an eyeball. And then the reason why I draw this in is so that I can see where I need to place my shadow shapes because it changes with angle. So shadow is here, here. It also comes up here and there, and this comes around like that. And then the highlight is right around there. It's kind of a weird highlighted shape, but this helps me see where my shape changes are in relationship to shadows and also form. And I'm just gonna drop that down a little bit more. All right, so now I know shadow shapes, light shapes, shadow shape, cast shadow, shadow in the back, and then everything else is the light. And just a little word of the wise, paint or render form in the lights. Don't do so much in the shadows. Another tip, squint down. I have too many students that work on paintings, they don't squint down enough. All right, drink break. There you get my bald head in the shot with my headphones on. That's great. All right. Now it's time to get some paint on. Okay, I'm going to take this larger for my light shapes. And when I'm looking at this still life here, I mean, the whole thing, it's a lemon, so it's going to be yellow, right? But is it going to be closer to like a orange yellow, or is it going to be closer to a green yellow? And which way is it going to be shifting? When I'm looking at it right now, because I have it in a shadow box, this top part is actually cooler or more of a green yellow, and this bottom part is more of a orange yellow. So anyways, that's just a good thing to separate. So green yellow's up here, orange yellow's down here, and then I have values. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to break up the value shapes. So if I just take CAD yellow, just take CAD yellow and put it on here. Way too chromatic. I mean, way too chromatic. I don't want to have that much chroma on my lemon because I have no more room to be able to render out value or form. So I'm going to take this CAD yellow, put it off to the side here. I'm going to add some yellow ochre just to kind of kill the color a little bit more, because yellow ochre is lower in chroma, slightly lower in value. I'm also going to take some of this Naples yellow and add it to it, and that also is going to kill the chroma. So now I have more of a yellow that I can work with. because that is just way too yellow. It's not that it's bad to have that much yellow, but if I start off with that much yellow, I'm going to have some problems. So I don't want to have too many problems. I want to get things figured out. And right now I'm just plastering on my light shapes. Scoop it up, plaster on. Okay, I'm going to mix a little bit more because I want to have more paint to play with in those lights. There we go. Don't overmix. Overmixing kills paintings. Or maybe it doesn't. Who really knows? All right, I've thrown some paint on there. Oh no, I got it out of the shape that I painted in there. It's detrimental. I need to get it also on this light shape that is right here. Ta-da. So easy. I know, this looks just like a real live lemon. I have some change that's going down there and a little bit at the top there. All right, now we need to go to shadow shapes. Shadow shapes and values, I'm going to just start off with yellow ochre. It's not a straight yellow ochre. In fact, when I look at the value, it's pretty darn close. It's just slightly lower in chroma. So I'm going to take some raw umber and some transparent oxide yellow. It's way too chromatic though. When I compare the two here, this chroma it's just too chromatic. So I'm going to shift it with some blue. Just a little bit of King's blue, little bit. Make that King blue happy. All right, so now that I've changed that, it decreased the chroma, it increased the value just a little bit, which is fine because I want to compress these values. Oh, I need so much more paint. This makes me sick how little of paint this is. Oh my heck. Okay, stop it. Just get more paint. All right, there we go. There's some paint. Yeah, buddy. It also becomes a little bit more of a blue on the top part over here. So I'm going to get some of that King's blue, lighten the value a little bit more. And then over here by the navel, it actually goes more of an orange. So I'm going to take a little bit of this perylene red. A little bit of that yellow ochre. Paint it in that shape. All right. So now that I have paint on here, I can deal with paint now. It might be the wrong value, which I know it is the wrong value. I've gone too dark. I want to compress those values even more. But I have different color changes. So I'm going to take some more of this yellow ochre, paint it right under here. Soften out that transition a little bit more. Look at that ugly greenish color. Soften out some of these forms. Yay. All right. Now that I have some of this put in, I am going to paint in the shadow value. I need to make sure that that value is correct. I'm going to go to a different brush. This is where I take my raw umber. I don't think I want to go as dark as the raw umber. Getting some medium to kind of thin it down a little bit. I don't know, maybe it'll work. Oh, this will darken it just a little bit too much. All right, I need to take some red, a little bit of yellow ochre, lighten up the value, but I want to keep it relatively warm. Okay, that value is looking better. Now I just come under the bottom of it. Hopefully on the camera you don't have a bunch of anti-aliasing. Is that what it's called? It's when you get these weird patterns because the pixels in the receptor of the camera are aligning with the shadow and light shapes of the canvas, and it creates this weird chattery look to it. Not very fun. Okay. There is a little cast shadow-ish area, and I'm going to put in the tannish color. I'm going to go slightly more, it's going to go darker in value than this, but it's a tannish form, and I'm going to create some really painterly abstract shapes on the surface just to make it more interesting. But to get there, I'm going to just go with yellow ochre, raw umber, and some of that flack white. Yeah, buddy. Holy guacamole. Look at that. It's like butter. It's better than butter. Maybe a little bit more. All right, I'm done with the paintbrush. I'm going to move on to the palette knife. I need more paint. So that's the downside of not mixing enough paint, is you start to put it on the canvas and it doesn't work very well because it takes forever to fill in. I don't have forever. I don't know about you, but I don't. Come on. What, I'll die in the next, 20 years? 20 years sounds about right. 20, 25 years? Man, that's all I have. I only have a partial lifetime left. It's like almost the age of my kids, for Pete's sake. All right, a little bit more white. Yes, don't want to mix it too much, but I'm going to come on and... That didn't go very far. Let's try this again. Well, I thought I mixed enough, but obviously I have not. So I just get to do it again. And you get to watch. Isn't that phenomenal? Man, it's so good. All right. More flack white. I also don't usually paint on this small of a palette. I usually like to paint on something that's slightly bigger. And the reason for that is so I can mix more paint. Go. That's the other nice thing about canvas, is that you can create this fun little texture that is on the canvas. If it's just a flat surface, you don't have anything to work off of. Most of the paintings that I do work on Alumilite, which is an aluminum panel. And that's a really, really flat surface, more flack white. Yes, there we go. It creates more variation, creates abstraction. It allows for focus to go on the fruit instead of the foreground. I'm going to leave parts of this pink showing through on the canvas, but right now I just need to get stuff on there. Get on there. Get on there. Come on. So close. This is where you get all the nice little happy mistakes. Nothing's a mistake. Happy accidents. Yeah, I'm looking at the camera, and at least it looks like there's weird squigglies on the canvas, but the more paint I put on it, the less squigglies you're actually going to see on the canvas. All right, now I'm going to go with the darker values in the background. Take some raw umber, a little bit of blue, along with black oil. Black oil has lead in it, so just like the flack white has lead in it. I mean, it's all lead. And some people like lead white, some people don't. The people that don't think lead white is very good are probably correct. It's not very good to eat. You don't want to eat that stuff. I wouldn't want to eat lead white or lead in general. But if you don't eat it, it's great to paint with. I was talking with another portrait artist online last week, and he was critiquing my portrait painting that I was doing, and he looked at my painting and said, "Wow, okay, do you use lead white?" And I said, "Yeah," and he's like, "Oh, I wouldn't use lead white. That stuff is just too, well, it's toxic, and its tinting strength is really low." And I responded back and said, "I know it's pretty low. That's why I love it. I can mix a lot of lead white into something, and it barely turns the value." And you'll see here when I'm working on the lemon, and it creates a more juicy paint look to it, and something that you create in subtlety. All the master artists before the 1900s used lead white. None of them died of poisoning. Well, some of them did die of poisoning, but I mean, if you really think about it, back then they would use lead white as makeup, in their makeup, and lots of different things. We don't do that nowadays, but lead white is only toxic if you ingest it, eat it, sniff it. I wouldn't recommend doing that with almost any pigment nowadays. I mean, you won't get lead poisoning from titanium white if you sniff it, but that's fine. Okay, more black oil. So the black oil is really nice because it works as a slight dryer of paint. If you want your oil paintings to dry faster, using the black lead will be great. Or black oil, sorry, not black lead, but I mean, it is lead. And I think it's really good stuff because, especially in your dark values, in your light values, it can get kind of a amber look to it. But it's all in relationship to everything else. So if you mix black oil with everything else, you're going to get an amber look to all of your colors. All right. Going to clean off my paintbrush and work on that background value just a little bit. I threw some paint down. Now I'm going to get some black oil and manipulate it with the paintbrush. A little bit black oil. More raw umber. A little bit of ultramarine blue. More black oil. All right, and this is where I don't want to have my background too thick. So that's why I use the black oil. It makes it thinner and makes it so that it's not as opaque. I like to have my backgrounds a little bit more thin versus opaque. And the reason for that is because when people look in shadow shapes, I don't want them to see paint texture. I want them to see almost nothing back there. I want them to simplify it. So as I'm going across this dark form and this dark mass in the background, I'm just painting more of that dark value and filling in those little textural elements. Oh, and there's a fun little thing that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and that is making your painting glow. We're going to create a glowing lemon today. Why did I say we? I mean, it's just me in here. And I mean, if you really think about what's going on right now, I'm working on this painting alone in my studio and basically publicizing the painting as I'm working on it. And I'm talking to myself because I don't know. I see there are a couple people that are on right now, but that's great. Hi, people. But more people, I'm assuming, are going to get on and watch this at a later time because not everybody can be here while I'm working on this painting. All right. A little bit more black oil. So the consistency is starting to get, oh, wrong one. The consistency of the oil paint is getting a bit too thick, so I'm having to work harder to let mass in this dark area. So that tells me I need to have a little bit more oil to move those values better. I don't want to scrub too much with this brush. It's a pretty soft brush. If I use a bristle brush, I'll get a lot more textures, and I don't want to have a lot more textures. The other thing too is as I'm thinking about all this stuff, okay, switching left-handed, if I can get it over this microphone. The other thing is when you're painting flat surfaces, try not to just keep it all one single color. Right now, for me, this is my poster study stage. So I'm just putting flat colors and values in the whole entire thing, and I'll reassess shape changes. But if I want to create variation in here, then I will actually take and mix a different color, maybe even a different value. Okay, I need to cut this down a little bit more. And over, there's this nice little angle that sits right there. It's so good. And I come back over here, and again with a wet paintbrush, a loaded brush, has paint on it, and it's relatively wet. I'm just coming in and I'm cutting into this shape a little bit more. The other thing with backgrounds, I love when I see people do this stuff, but so they have the foreground and then the background, and they make a hard edge shape between the two. So they'll just go like, that's the background, that's the foreground. That looks so good, but they make it really hard edged. And, you know, a design principle of hard edges tend to come forward, soft edges recede back into space. So I always go around and remind students, well, is that what you want people to look at? Do you want people to look at the difference between the background and the surface that they're actually painted on? And usually the answer is no. So I'm just clearing off my brush again. Usually the answer is no. So I'm going to come in here and take this nice little blue, mix it in with this black. So I'm making a gray tone. Going to get some of that black oil. I always feel like a pirate when I paint with this stuff, the black oil. I don't know why a pirate, don't ask me. So I'm just coming in and I'm putting in a value that's between the two. And I'm using the edge of the brush to soften out that transition between the background and this foreground. And I cool it down a lot more so it goes back into space. Did you see that? That was like magic. I don't know if you saw the magic, but the magic just happened. And if you missed it, I'm sorry. That sucks. Okay, I'm going to do it again. Watch for the magic. So here I go. Adding some more of this gray. I'm not ultra careful about it because it doesn't matter right now. I can always go back in and change it up, but this is too hard of an edge. So I'm going to go from this lighter value up into that darker value. Just go back and forth. Kind of like I'm petting the painting. Hello, painting. I'm petting. There we go. And then I bring it down into this lighter shape. The surface. Magic. I don't know about you, but I always wanted to become a magician. No, that's a lie. I didn't care to become a magician, but that simplifies things out pretty good. Maybe I should have become a magician. Magician? Sounds weird. All right, going around that shadow shape. Ta-da! Softening out all of those edges. All right, so now because I just softened out that edge, it looks like it's going back into space. It's like this plane is no longer flat. It creates depth and goes behind, which is great. This gives me room to be able to manipulate that lemon. Oh, thank you, Marianne. I just saw your statement. That's very nice of you. Thanks for joining me. And I am just going to clean up this shape just a little bit more. There we go. And the thing that I like most about this too is lost and found edges. That makes it really fun. For me, I think. A lot of people will start to work on their painting and they're like, oh, I have to cut out everything and I have to make it look so realistic and sharp. But mystery is lost when you define everything for the viewer. So I like to have a sense of mystery in my paintings by not painting everything in. I mean, everything's there. I can see everything, but I'm choosing not to paint it because it's my painting, so I can do whatever I want. So I'm going to go back into the shadow shape, and I'm going to soften out those edges. And I'm trying to remember, I added some red to it. Maybe not that red. I'm going to go transparent oxide red, because that's a warmer red for the shadow. Oh, man, look at that. Nailed it. I love it when I nail that color and value. Okay. When it's closest to the object, you're going to have a harder edge because of the cast shadow onto the surface. And then the further away you go from the object, the softer that edge is going to become. So here I go with the harder edge, come out here. It's going to read as a pretty hard edge, but the more it goes out and mixes with the other paint, the more it's going to soften. So I could come in here and just go back and forth and massage that color in. There we go. Massage it. That just kind of softens things out a little bit more. And maybe that shape is just a little bit wrong. I'm going to bring it up a little bit more here. There we go. Massage in that direction. It's just like, man, the latissimus dorsi sword. Could you massage it? Sure. Latissimus dorsi needs a massage every once in a while. All right. I know the lemon does not look like anything totally awesome right now, but I'm going to go from the shadow shape and I'm going to curve it up and around. So I need to find a value between those two. And I'm going to take this, which is basically the color that I used on the under part, which is a little bit warmer. I'm going to add a little bit of transparent oxide red to it, maybe less than that. There we go. And now I'm going to come in and paint that little shape there. Okay, it needs to go darker. It looks like to me it needs to go darker. So add a little bit more paint. I'm going to go with transparent oxide yellow. Nope, even darker. Here's the other thing. As I'm moving the paintbrush across, I'm actually removing some of the paint. So I need something with a little bit more stick. And that stick is going to be raw umber. Raw umber is a phenomenal color because it is, well, it sticks better. Turns form. Okay, that's looking better. So now I have that darker values. It starts to turn up. It gets a little bit lighter and more of a less green that I have here, and more of a orange. So I need to shift my hue because my hue is pretty green down there in relationship to the warmth that's under there. So I'm going to go with a little bit of red. Maybe not that much red, but a little bit. There we go. Some yellow, maybe a little bit more. I need to pump up that color just a little bit more because it's more of an orange. And the reason why it's more of an orange, yeah, it's about the right value. Holy cow, I love it. Is because light is bouncing off of this surface and into the lemon. And so I need to just define what that lemon shape is actually doing. And here I'm holding it at a steep angle so that I get variation in brushwork and also texture. And I really want to compress those values. So that looks like a pretty good value to me. I'm going to use the same thing over here on the navel side. And once you have a good, simple poster studies, just simple light shapes, shadow shapes, coming in and putting in variation, I mean, you already have a roadmap. You already have most of the stuff figured out. So it's pretty easy to come in and paint some of this stuff and get the texture right. Okay, now it goes slightly more red, which is this stuff here up at the top. No, a little bit more red. Let's go, I'm taking a risk. That's way too red. And yes, it looks like I'm just petting the painting. I'm just barely dabbing the brush on there. A little bit darker on this form as it turns under. I'm getting a slight glare. I don't know if you are, but I am with this little part, but that's okay. I'm building up. And this is slightly too light in value, but I will get there. I'm sneaking up on it right now. You know, I want to sneak up on this painting because I don't want to do everything so obvious. I see a little bit more of a greenish tinge over here. So I'm going to take some of the King Blue, which is a lighter value, add it to the yellow, and it's going to shift into this green. I don't want to go too green, but it's green enough and slightly dark enough that it will start to turn the form. There we go. A little bit more greenish. Along this whole entire edge, it goes just slightly more green. Even up the top side here, it goes a little bit more green. And again, I'm going slightly darker in value because I want to make sure that I'm turning the form whenever you see, I say this to my students all the time, whenever you see a change in form, that translates into a change in value. So it gets darker back here and gets lighter as it comes in the front here because it's basically a sphere. So the values back here have to be darker than the values here. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'm going to do some fun little glowy stuff here in a second. Okay, not a second, more like in maybe an hour or so. Clean my brush. There's a ribbon right here of a higher chroma yellow. And I don't want to get it yet because I want to keep my shape. So this gets a little bit darker and less blue. So if I go yellow ochre, a little bit of raw umber, because that's darkening the value. Let's see how that looks. Ooh, that's looking pretty good, actually. I'm digging it. It's grayish. So the raw umber is an awesome gray. If you want to gray things down, use raw umber. If you want to decrease the chroma of something. And yellow is really tricky to navigate with because it will go more green in your darker values or more orange in your darker values. You don't have there's no good yellow, neutral yellow. If you look at Munsell's color system and you look at his yellows that he has in there, it shifts to a green or to an orange. It doesn't stay a true yellow, which I thought is kind of interesting. Okay. I need to darken this value. Even though it's in the lights, I don't want it that light. So I'm going to take some of this yellow and find a happy medium between the two. Somewhere around there. So it's relatively neutral, but I mean, these are some pretty darn ugly colors, aren't they? Need to just kind of neutralize that. They are pretty ugly colors, but they're all different versions of yellow. It's so great. Okay, now I have to have this part come up a little bit more. I'm going more with this yellow ochre. That's why I like these mixture areas. You can just come in and pick which mixture fits the area that you're working on the most. And if I'm like, oh, it needs to go more blue, then I can pick my blue mixture a little bit more. Or if it needs to go more orange, I can pick the orange mixture a little bit more. So this part needs to go just a little bit more green right there. But that's pretty close to the right value. And this lemon is not the fullest looking lemon. It looks kind of specklied. Too light of a value. Dang it. Hate it when I mess up. I learn nothing from messing up. Sorry, that was very sarcastic. Okay, that high chroma yellow, still too chromatic here in the middle. But that it might be close to that chroma down here, but it just shifts to an orange. Oh, so I need to go back